So, despite having entirely too much work to do lately, and being behind on that as it is, I decided to sign up for a track day because the first one of the year is coming up, and I've been working on cars for like 2 years straight, and I want to have some fun. So, fortunately, the RX-7 still doesn't work, as you can probably imagine. So I'll be taking my CRX instead. And while this car is currently already drivable, there's a few upgrades I want to do to it before I hit the track, and just a few things I need to do to it to make sure that it's going to survive the day, and also to make sure that it'll actually pass tech inspection. So I'm going to walk you through all of those, get it ready, and then yeah, hopefully nothing goes wrong and we can just take it to the track and have a good time. Alright, so first of all, I'm pretty sure I need some sort of fire extinguisher mounted somewhere where I can reach it to pass tech. So, I got my fire extinguisher. I got this cheap little mount off of Amazon. It's like 20 something bucks. And I'm pretty sure it'll do. It's just meant to mount to a roll bar. Don't have a roll bar, but I do have a harness bar. And I'm thinking right in the middle, right about there, should be fine. I should be able to reach over, pull the pin, pop it out, and use it if I need to, and hopefully I don't. I don't have passenger seat belts or a passenger seat, so I'm not too concerned about it getting too close right here, but for, you know, future use, I'll probably eventually have a passenger seat with passenger harness in here. So I'm going to try to avoid that side as much as I can and try to center it. My seat is a little bit pushed back right now, so I'm not too concerned about interference there either. Although I do also have a racing seat that I'm going to be installing in this, and I should probably install that first just to make sure it's going to clear. Let me go grab that. Alright, the car seat's in place. I don't have a bracket for it yet, it's on the way, but this is about where it should sit once I do have the bracket and it's all installed properly. And obviously, as you can see, I got plenty of clearance. It's not even close. So, let me go ahead and line some holes up, drill them, and get this thing mounted in place. Rattle around obnoxiously, so I'm probably not going to drive with this like this just on the street, but for the racetrack, good enough. I can just reach around, pull it out, and put out fires. But I've had to put out fires before with one of these in a car, and let me just tell you, it's not enough, but hey, they require it, so whatever. Alright, so my car has always had rear disc brakes. These are off of a DA Integra though. They're almost the same as regular CRX rear disc brakes, except they have a slightly greater track width, and the braking and the parking brake cables are pretty long for this chassis, so they kind of loop, you kind of have to loop them around inside, and I don't really like that. So what I've done, I had an extra set of actual CRX rear trailing arms. You can tell the difference because this piece right here is longer versus this on the DA Integra. It's really short. I've upgraded the trailing arm bushings from rubber to spherical PCI bushings. These are an older style, but they'll do just fine. And last time I took it in for an alignment, they didn't want to do the rear because they couldn't adjust the toe allegedly. So they got these adjustable toe arms. So hopefully I won't have an issue with that again. And also these don't have the same track width, so they'll have it'll be a better setup for the chassis. As for the actual brakes, I'm going to be keeping the brakes and the rotors off of the DA Integra trailing arms. They're exactly the same, they're just on a different trailing arm. So also with the CRX trailing arms, I've also got both the parking brake cables for the CRX. These are much shorter than the DAs, so I won't have the issue with bunched up parking brake cables. Good thing I'm replacing these anyways. These bushings are done. Switching up suspension components, it's a good idea to just compare the lengths of things, see how close or far away they are. These are right about where they should be, so I'm going to run with them just the way they are. Alright, the trailing arm's swapped out, the brakes are back on. Now the fun part is going to be swapping out the brake cables. I might have to drop the fuel tank for it, but I'm going to see what I can do. Alright, I got the left one out with pretty minimal effort. I'm going to try to get the right one out first before I start putting this new one in for the left, because I think the right one's going to give me a little more trouble. So let me try that quick and see where we get. Alright, well, by some miracle, I managed to get that in on the right side of the car. I don't know, well, you can see that, but there it is going into the car. Although, I think I'm still going to have to drop the tank because that right there, you can see it, this piece needs to be bolted into the frame, and it was hard enough to get the bolt out, but I have no idea how I'm going to get it to thread back in with that tiny little space. It's literally a finger. So yeah, probably should have just dropped the tank to begin with, but I don't like dropping the tank, so I had to try. So let me drop the tank now. Alright, so I opted to only partially drop the gas tank, and that seems to have worked out perfectly. Got that all in place. The other side is much more accessible even with the gas tank in place, so I'm just going to pop this gas tank back where it goes and then put the other side on and call this a day. Hell yeah, boys! And yes, I can say that. My statistics show a 100% male audience. Not a single woman watching my videos. But anyway, I got the parking brake cables installed. Gas tank's back in place. It's tight fit. Can't really show everything very well on the camera, but All I gotta do is swap out that trailing arm and I'll be done, but I'm not gonna show that. It's the same thing as the left side. You've already seen it. Thought I was done back here, didn't you? But no. I ended up picking up some parts the other day from a friend, randomly. And let's go ahead and put those on. So for starters, I got a used ASR subframe brace that also has a provisions for a rear sway bar. If you don't know about CRXs, DX, and HF models, both don't come with a rear sway bar, only SIs do, and they don't even come with the bolt holes to put it in, so you can't even swap one on without doing like ribbon and stuff. So I've been wanting to go with one of these for a while and finally got a good price on it, so I got that. And while I was picking that up, he also had these and just, you know, gave me a pretty good deal on the package, so I figured I'd go ahead and upgrade my rear sway, my rear lower control arms. I usually don't care. I usually just stick with stock, as you've seen. Upgraded bushings, of course, but for the price, couldn't really pass it up. And these will help a lot with weight reduction. And also, I already know that they work with the sway bar because they were already installed on his car, so I figured I just wouldn't take chances. And these are pretty nice. They have spherical outer bushings, and then the other ones are like some really hard plastic, which is kind of nice. So they'll probably help with my suspension even more. The reason I took off my exhaust is because you have to drill holes for this one. It only has one bolt on each side for the brace, and the other ones you gotta line up to your trunk spare tire well and drill 2 holes on each side in order to bolt it in. So had to get the exhaust out of the way for that. So you go ahead and get it in, lined up, arc some holes, and get to drilling. I usually prefer to just leave suspension parts stock because I think things like this are just flashy and not really all that big of a improvement. But honestly, yeah, I'm glad I bought these. That looks good. That looks real good. Shame you'll never see it driving on behind the car because the exhaust and the bumper will be in the way and the car's too low for anyone else to see underneath it, but it looks good regardless. But anyway, I'm going to slap the exhaust back on and then call the rear end done. Alright, so moving on to the front end of the car. This is the current brake setup that I've been running for the last 1.5 years or so. and it's worked just fine. These are 90 to 91 CRX SI front calipers. They're 9.3 inch rotors, and on the street they work just fine. Like literally I've had zero issues, but they do get kind of hot on just like normal street, you know, not normal street driving, but like normal hard street driving, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to risk using them on the track, even with upgraded pads, because right now I'm just using whatever pads that I got new back in the day. So if you have these, honestly, keep them on the street car. They're perfectly fine. You might have some that look like this instead. Difference is these are SI and these are DX. Despite looking much cooler in my opinion, these are actually worse than these ever so slightly. These have, I mean, it's basically the same design overall, but the caliper, or sorry, the piston is smaller. On DX, they're 48.8 millimeters for the piston, and on SI, they're 52.9 millimeters for the piston. So it's much bigger. It's not much bigger, but it's a slightly bigger piston size, and it's gonna brake harder than these would. So if you wanted to upgrade your calipers from these to these, it would be a slight upgrade. But what I have in mind is this, which you might think looks almost exactly the same. But here's the rotor that goes with it. And you can probably immediately tell it's much larger. It's almost the exact same outer diameter as the actual caliper itself is on the other ones. And you see it doesn't even come close to this. These are DA, DX, or DC2, EX, Civic, I think also, maybe not RSX. Basically, these are the 10.3 inch rotors that come with most Integras, or actually, I think all Integras, and only 90 to 91 Civic EX sedans. They're 10.3 inch, and the caliper size on the caliper piston size on these is 56.3 millimeters, so it's even bigger than the SIs with a larger brake rotor. And to complement that, I went ahead and got some HP Plus or Hawk HP Plus pads so that I wouldn't have, or just to make them even better than they already are. Now to run those on a CRX, you can't just use your stock knuckle. It's made for the SI size brake rotors, right? So if you try to run this on this, I don't even know if it would fit up, to be honest with you, but if it did, you wouldn't be running these rotors anytime soon. So to fit these on a CRX, you can use DA Integra rotor or DA Integra knuckles. Something about the geometry of them is wrong. I don't know exactly what it is, but something is wrong. It might just be camber. I've heard caster too, although I don't really see how a knuckle would affect caster. It's something to keep in mind. So the only thing that was ever made specifically for the EF chassis is this. This is an EX sedan 9091 front knuckle. You can tell because it's got RH3 TAC A for the part number, whereas these are RH3 or LH3 TAC H. So if you have front knuckles that look almost exactly alike, but they have an A there, and you can't run your regular side brakes for some reason, that's a why. But I highly doubt that you have that set up, because these are actually pretty hard to find, because again, they're only made on one trim of 1 or 2 years of car. So a little bit of a rare part, but I managed to find one. So I'm gonna go ahead and completely swap all of this out, put on the EX front brakes, and get everything just get everything reinstalled. Well, shout out to my new GoPro for corrupting almost all of the footage I took the other day. But this is what they look like all installed. Obviously it looks pretty much the same as it used to, just a little bit bigger. But now that I got that done, I got to sort out the brakes. Now, as nice as it would be to just go ahead and bleed the brakes and call it a day on this, due to the size of the larger cylinder, anyone who knows anything about how brake systems works would know that for a larger piston size, you need a larger master cylinder size. And because these are so big, obviously the 13/16 master cylinder that the CRXs come with stock isn't exactly going to cut it, and neither is the proportioning valve. So let me hit you with a little bit of random Honda brake knowledge. Alright, so if you're sticking with stock CRX suspension setup and brakes, then there's a couple different combinations you want to stick with. So if you've got either DX or SI front calipers, pretty sure it's the same for HF too, if anybody even runs those front calipers. But you're gonna have but if you have those front calipers and rear drums, you're gonna have a 1725 proportioning valve and a 13/16 master cylinder. If you have a full 9091 SI setup, where you've got SI or DX front brakes and rear discs, then you're gonna have a 2040 proportioning valve and also still the 13/16 master cylinder. Now when you've got rear discs and EX or DA Integra front brakes, you're going to want to use a 4040 master cylinder. You can tell, if you look really close, right there it says 4040. And as for the master cylinder size, you're going to want to upgrade to a EX 15/16 master cylinder. And this is the only one that's going to mount directly to a CRX brake booster. You can also use a DA Integra master cylinder as well. It's also 15/16 or even Integra Type R master cylinder. That's a 1-inch. But for those, you're going to have to swap out your brake booster, because these legs, or whatever you want to call them, to where it mounts, are flopped. So it's going to be mounted like this instead of this. And plus, for the Integra Type R master cylinder, it's got a completely different fitting style, so you have to do some adapters and stuff to make that work. I went the easy route and just got the EX master cylinder and the 4040 proportioning valve. So I'm going to swap out those really quick and then just bleed the brakes and it should be done. Alright, well, I doubt anyone really wanted to see me struggle through that, so I just went ahead and didn't film any of it. But I got this massive reservoir 15/16 inch master cylinder installed. Got the 4040 brake proportioning valve installed. That was a pain. And I got my brakes completely bled, and they are nice and firm now. Better than this car's ever felt, honestly. Now all I gotta do is put the wheels back on, put it on the ground. But before I do that, last thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and change the oil in this, because it's pretty much due anyway. And before I go to the track, I want to put some better oil in it. So got some full synthetic VR1 10W30. A little higher weight than I usually run, but for racing, it's not a bad thing to do, because it's going to be really hot for a long period of time. So I'm going to change that and hopefully take this thing for a test ride. Alright, now as much as I hate to cut up perfectly good panels, I don't really trust this hood latch all that much, because I mean, I've tested it up to like 100 and some odd miles per hour and it hasn't let me down. But the track I'm going to has some places where you could reach 130, 140, maybe 150 miles an hour, depending on how fast your car is. I probably won't get that fast, but I still don't really trust this hood to stay down at those higher speeds. So just in case, the last thing I'm going to be doing is installing these quick latch QL35s. These are the mini ones. They're not very big, but they're rated for like 150 pounds a piece, and I think that's plenty, considering, like I said, I've already had this car going like 100 miles an the least. The speedometer's not the most accurate, but around there. And you know, an extra 30-40 miles an hour at most. I think an extra 150 per clip is going to be plenty. So I'm going to drill some holes, install these, and not have any worries about my hood flying open on the track. Got these finished up. Latches. I got it right where I wanted it to, so where you latch the hood and they latch on their own. But then when you want to pop the hood, you got just enough give to release. front end back together. All right, well, over the past week or so, as I've had time, we've added this fire extinguisher mounted, we've added this racing seat, upgraded all the rear suspension, upgraded the front brakes and suspension, added hood pins, put in some racing oil, got a little intake headlight put in, and this car's pretty much exactly where I wanted to be for the track. So I did a little bit of DIY alignment because I haven't had a chance to go get a real alignment yet. I'll be doing that before I actually hit the track, if I feel like I need it at least. But for now, should be good enough. But before I run out of daylight and battery, I'm gonna go ahead and take it for the first test drive. That fire extinguisher mount isn't actually rattling around at all. I was really expecting it to, so that's a relief. And the racing seat feels good in the CRX. I mean, at first it was giving me RX-7 vibes because that's the only car I've ever had a racing seat in before, until now at least, and it just felt exactly the same. But I mean, that makes sense, obviously. Going about 55, I'm going to test the brakes a little bit here. Pretty good. That wasn't very hard braking. I'll work up to that. Come up to a turn, I'm going to brake a little harder now. Just a shift, of course. brakes as hard as I like could without locking them up. They brake so hard, so easily. So hard that you can kind of feel the rear end kind of start to want to come out on you. That's something I'm definitely going to need to watch out for at the track. Test track here. Get back on the highway. I'm basically just cooling it down on the way home now, but I mean, everything checks out. Everything seems good so far. I'm gonna pop it up on a lifting, or not a lift, but I'm just gonna get up on jack stands again, do kind of like a bolt check, just make sure nothing came loose, anything like that. But it all feels good. So hope you all enjoyed watching the video. Hope you all maybe even learned a little bit about brake systems at least on a CRX. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here, and next time I'll see you, be at the racetrack. So I'll see you then.